Okay.
How are you?
I'm good. So thank you for being here, Fatima.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, as a journalist in West, Fatima aims to bring more awareness about her community through storytelling. She's currently working as a freelancer and hosting both You Mentor Talk Show and Community Voice Talk Show. Fatima has also founded the Muslim Journalist with Zainab Merchant, who is also here. Their mission is to shed light on the issues within our Muslim community that are often overlooked in mainstream media. So, thank you for being here, Sister Fatima. And we also have Zainab Merchant. Assalamualaikum, Zainab.
Walaikum salam. How are you all?
How are you?
Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure meeting you here.
Likewise.
Fatima Zainab works as a journalist, author, and entrepreneur. Zainab is more commonly known by her blog named Zainab Writes, where she speaks about social justice issues. She's in the final semester of her master's program at Harvard University in journalism and international security, as well as co-founder of the independent media outlet, The Muslim Journalist. It's really inspiring. Thank you, Zainab, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, we're also delighted to have Masla Tahir. Assalamualaikum, Sister Masla.
Walaikum salam. How are you?
I'm good. How have you been?
Alhamdulillah, good. Thank you so much for having me on. Such an inspiring panel. So great to be here.
Thank you for coming to World Hijab Day conference. And Masla Tahir is a social entrepreneur and the founder of My Hijab, My Right. My Hijab, My Right is a movement which raising awareness around hijab bans worldwide. And she's a leader of various groups on campus. She has been fighting for Muslim women's rights, including against the Bill 21 case in Quebec, Canada. Thank you, Masla, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce an inspiring journalist from Minnesota, Manar Edley. Assalamualaikum, Manar. I can't hear your voice. Maybe you can fix your audio. Okay, it's fine now. So how are you?
Walaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure meeting you here. So Manar Edley is the CEO and editor-in-chief for Mint Press News. She's the producer, also the host of Behind the Headlines. She started her career as an independent multimedia journalist covering Midwest and national politics while focusing on civil liberties and social justice issues. She's also the first American woman who wears hijab to anchor the news in American media. She's based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thank you, everyone, for being here, inspiring journalists and activists. I'm so happy to have you all here. And I'm going to have the first question to Manar Mahavish. Are you ready? All right. So actually, I'm so curious. Before you began to establish Mint Press News, you worked at a TV station, didn't you?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and later becoming the first American woman who wears hijab to anchor the news in American media. So, what did your coworkers think about your hijab at the time?
You know, surprisingly, my coworkers and my employers were very supportive of the fact that I wore hijab. They were not the issue. The real issue came from within the Muslim community, from within my own family, my own parents, and just, you know, aunts and uncles and so forth. You know, as Muslims growing up in a post 9/11 world, we didn't think that, well, not me, but people in the Muslim community, you know, they were really comfortable in kind of sitting on the sidelines within our communities because they were so afraid of this Islamophobia that had overcome the country post 9/11. And so, you know, a lot of people didn't have faith in raising their voices and raising their hands and kind of standing up to these you know, demonizing stereotypes that were being presented within the mainstream corporate media. And just like so many people, I grew up seeing the same images within mainstream corporate media that everybody else saw. I witnessed firsthand the media portraying Muslim women in, the Middle East or within Muslim countries as being oppressed, being controlled by a man and being, prevented from an education. And a lot of these images came from countries that the United States was actively involved in militarily. For example, in countries like Afghanistan, or in some countries like in Africa, like in Somalia, where the war on terror was basically where the U.S. military machine was active. And so I took it upon myself to recognize that this demonization, this caricature of Muslim women was obviously not accurate, because that's not how it was in my family. That's not how it was within the Muslim community that I grew up in. And so I really wanted to break this barrier. And as a Palestinian American who had witnessed firsthand, occupation and, media propaganda towards, Palestinians, I wanted to take it upon myself to stand up to this stereotyping of Muslim women, to show the true face of what Muslim women are, that we are empowered, that we are independent, that we are intelligent, and that we're very much capable of doing anything that other women within other faiths and races and colors and creeds, whatever it is, are capable of doing. And so when I pursued journalism, I was very outspoken within my community that I wanted to become the first American Muslim woman to anchor and report the news within American media. And people within my own family immediately told me, what, are you crazy? Like, no one's gonna hire you. This is America. They hate Muslims. Look at how the media portrays Muslim women. And I said, well, that should give us more of a reason to stand up to these stereotypes, to represent what we truly, truly are. And so the more I heard no, the more I heard, that we can't do this as Muslim women, the more fire it just ignited under my feet. And so that's what really empowered me. And I found courage and I found catharsis in this, deep sadness and a pain within our Muslim community, to empower me to pursue this path within journalism. And the only non-Muslim person that really kind of gave me negative feedback was actually one of my media professors. And he said, and within journalism, we have to be objective within media. And so when you wear the hijab, that represents your faith and your religion. And so you're not showing that you can be objective. But as a Muslim woman, I can uphold the First Amendment, to uphold free speech, and to uphold what media and journalism is meant to uphold in this country, which is a watchdog to those in power. And so that's what I've been doing with my outlet at Mint Press, is to show that, the powers that be have obstructed and have weaponized the whole image and, word of hijab to justify wars abroad that have resulted in massive bloodshed and massive profits to the military machine. And so that has been my aspiration and my goals.
Absolutely. Everything you said is right. And thank you for breaking the stereotype. And that's incredible story, actually, Minar. And now I'm going to ask Zainab. Zainab, you had airport incident few years ago, and the news about being mistreated by the authority recently gone viral again. So have you seen demonization aspect on the news?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on here. It's a pleasure. I've supported World Hijab Day since its founding. And I remember the campaign so vividly, and it's something that brings immense pride to myself and many Muslim women. So I thank you for having me on here, and giving me a platform, and helping me meet so many amazing people. Thank you so much. As far as your question, I think, yes, I was very surprised by the second wave of viral news, and that really shows you how social media works. Things from long ago will come back, resurface, and then go viral as if it happened like today. I was very surprised, and I know that there was no ill intentions behind, going viral. People do get very upset when they see women, a lot of non-Muslims too. I saw many non-Muslims come and become allies to the cause and to that, and they were very upset to see that a Muslim woman had gone through something like that at the airport. But I wish that there was, the wording was done in a way that showed my situation in a different light, because alhamdulillah, like, I was able to fight the injustice and I was able to emerge victorious from the incident. So, instead of focusing on the negative and putting me out there as a victim, I wish my story was shown more in a positive light, that this is what she did, this is how she overcame it, and many women should, be able to do the same.
So have you seen any demonization aspect on all of the news about you?
Yeah, there was a lot of like cherry picking. Like I said, the victim, showing us in a very victim type of light, that, oh, like, she's so oppressed, she's oppressed by the hijab, and then she's oppressed by the government because of her faith. So there's a lot of oppression type of terminology. They cherry picked my incident where I was, strip searched in airport closet, and it was focusing on very vivid visions or versions of the event, which I didn't really like to see, and so I wasn't part of sharing that viral messaging myself, which is interesting because it was about me. So yeah, I do think that there is a certain light shown about us, and I'll get into
Yeah, portray the Muslim women are oppressed. And then I'm going to Canada to Masla Tahir. Masla, so Bill 21 in Quebec, Canada actually avoid people from wearing religious symbols such as hijab. So how is it going in Canada right now? Is it getting better?
So unfortunately, the legal precedent and the process of battling Bill 21 is going to be a long and hard journey, because like the legal precedent that was put into place to actually pass Bill 21 in the House of Commons. There are many different legal teams on the ground in Canada working to now battle Bill 21 at the Supreme Court level from a federal perspective, where it is perspective is going to take in at least another 5 years to get rid of Bill 21, for lack of better words. However, on the ground, what we are working to do is change the narrative from English-speaking Canada, and trying to mobilize our community within Ontario in regions outside of Quebec to try to change the framing and the narrative of Bill 21, because the way that it's been classified is, oh, it's a secular bill that is preventing any religious symbols from being worn at a government designated work position, whether that's you're a public school teacher or a lawyer working for the government. You can't wear any religious symbol, and so it's classified as a secular bill. However, if you look at the statistics, it's the majority population that the bill actually is impacting is Muslim women, because there are large groups of Muslim women inside of Quebec who wore the hijab and who are public school teachers. And so in practice, this bill impacts largely Muslim women. And so from an English-speaking Canada perspective, what we're working to do is change that narrative, change that framing, and say that this bill is impacting and infringing on Muslim women's rights, on women's rights. Really trying to help everyone to understand that it's never okay to tell women how they can and cannot dress. And fundamentally, Bill 21 and all hijab bans are a women's rights issue, because they're men telling women how they can or cannot dress, literally telling us to strip, otherwise we can't work, right? So you really have to, as visible Muslims, we have to be the ones kind of on the front line, working to change that narrative and help others understand just how deep this issue is, and how fundamental to feminism and fundamental to women's rights bills like Bill 21 are. So that's kind of the work that we're doing as the legal proceedings continue onto the Supreme Court. So that's kind of the narrative right now around Bill 21.
All right. So yeah, obviously, actually, it's very impacting for Muslim women, you know. And then, Fatima, as you lived in Canada as well, so I'm interested to hear your view about Bill 21 in Quebec. So, what is the best response to Bill 21 actually?
Well, I lived in Toronto, so I don't have that firsthand experience on what the bill did and how it affected people. I do have friends who live in Quebec, but none of them are actually working within government. And that's what it really affects, is the people who are trying to get into those places that are higher up. And I think that's something that's very interesting to actually bring up, is that it's not at the ground level, it's at that institutional, like, top level that they're trying to take us out of. And I think that's very important to highlight and raise, is that we as Muslim women are not going to have that representation within the police force, within the government, within the law. And within a country like Canada that is so, multicultural and open and welcoming, it's not supposed to be this way. But there are a couple things that people can do, in my opinion, to help, which is support what Sister Mahala, is that? Sorry, I can't see her name on there.
It's Masla. Yeah,
Masla. I'm very sorry. Was just speaking about, but to actually support the CCLA and the the lawsuit that they're bringing forward to the Supreme Court to take, to really just stop this infringement of our institutional rights, right? So I think there's many things that people can do, and it has to start with the government at the governmental level, which is what we aren't able to get into.
Right. Yeah. What Sister Masla has done is really important to support everyone in Quebec. And then I'm going to ask Manar about news, as you are the CEO of Main Press News. So I'm actually curious about, like in terrorism case, if the perpetrators have Middle Eastern appearance, the journalists often use the word terrorist on the narrative. But if the perpetrators look white, the narrative will say they have mental illness, And, it seems that media hesitate to write terrorists on the narrative if the perpetrators look white. So what's your view about this? Your voice? All right.
If you actually look at FBI data from the FBI, excuse me, the biggest threat here in the United States to people's safety is homegrown terrorism by white American males. Unfortunately, the media does not properly label, terrorism when it's happening from a white supremacist group of people as terrorism, but will do that for a Muslim person, perpetrating any sort of violence. And that's part of the, colonization narrative that's being spread, spread within mainstream media to justify, wars abroad and overseas. Every single day we hear within the media, especially after 9/11, the word terrorism has been weaponized to fuel this hatred and this dehumanization of Muslim people, whether it's Muslim women or Muslim men. And especially, we talk about, defending Muslim women and our right to wear hijab, but rarely do we hear about defending the image of the Muslim man. The Muslim man has been absolutely demonized and dehumanized within Western mainstream corporate media, and it is to justify wars abroad. The United States, which is the largest empire the world has ever seen, is perpetrating over 350 acts of war within predominantly Muslim nations across the Middle East and across Africa. And so to justify these actions of war, the media has to kind of, create this kind of boogeyman, and that has become the Muslim man, who is portrayed as extremely angry, always shown in dark, armed, wearing, has weapons all over him, basically in the image of like groups like ISIS, even though our government is actively funding and arming governments that are through proxy arming these terrorism groups. And so if you see this cycle and if you follow the money, it really is just a means of justifying, profiteering for the military machine, for these weapons manufacturers like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman. And we have to be really careful about these narratives, not just from the perspective of non-Muslims falling for these narratives, but also as Muslims falling for these narratives, because what we're seeing is like this rise of even Muslim women, kind of becoming anti-Arab men or anti-Muslim men, and they want to look to, marry or have relationships from men within, outside of their cultures because of this demonization. But again, all of this demonization happens to justify these wars abroad for this cycle of military funding.
All right, that's a very insightful explanation. Thank you, Mnar. And I'm going to ask Zainab. Zainab, actually in 2016 in Brooklyn, a man threatened an off-duty police officer, and Daniel Alamrani, that's her name, and this man telling her to go back to your country. Actually, it's an impact of Islamophobia. So my question is, how to stop the fear of wearing hijab in the Western society?
I think that we hear this quite a bit. I've been told to go back to my own country, and I'm like, where do I go? It's my home. And it's really, I'm laughing about it now, but in that moment, you're gripped with fear because they're actually threatening your way of life and where you're from. It's more often than not, a lot of people actually live in the States or live in Canada. That is their home. And even if it's not, if they've immigrated from some place, America is a land of immigrants. It's a very new founded country, and that even was taken over by bloodshed. So I feel like it comes from a very superiority complex, and it's a lot of it is rooted in fear. Just like Manar said, they really use fear to justify violence and wars abroad, and really paint a negative picture of Muslims. The best defense, in my opinion, is no defense. We as Muslims should very unapologetically not have to defend ourselves. With who we are, and we don't even need to answer those questions. Go back to your own country, but this is my home. But this is there's no justification for being treated in that way. And I think that Islamophobia, hijabophobia, all these things are very real. The trauma is very real, and the implications are very real. I think that I can't speak on behalf of women who've experienced trauma. I myself have been pushed and shoved. My hijab's been taken off of me at school, leaving scars on my neck. I've had to look over my shoulder a lot of my life, post 9/11, growing up in Florida. I've had to defend my children in my own home with a gun-touting man outside my home and putting the children into the closet because, as a Muslim family and someone who wears a hijab, very much visible in my family. So I can't speak on behalf of all women. You know, we don't know really what women and men as well go through. So I can't be like, you know, this is how you eradicate fear. But the main, the root of the issue is that you cannot eradicate fear with fear. We can't really be fearful of our decisions because that won't really help anything. It'll just continue this vicious cycle that's very much rooted in fear. I don't think that, for example, the American people or the Canadian people who are racist or have these kinds of behaviors are actually ill intentioned. They're acting on what they know. If the news cycle is filled with terror, with war, with negative images of us, they're just, I guess, acting on what they know and what they've heard. So if we continue to hide away from it, I don't think that that's an active solution. We should definitely do more outreach. And something what World Hijab Day is doing is really fantastic because it really is a threat to this white man orientalist narrative because so many women are stepping up and saying, no, this is my right, this is my choice. I love wearing my hijab. And that's a huge threat because this is not the image that they want to depict about us in the media.
Yeah, actually, that must be hard when through all of the experience that you mentioned before. And right, but the latest update, it says that you're not on the watch list anymore. So, how did you win the case? Would you please to tell us about it?
I'm a Muslim woman who is visibly Muslim wearing the hijab. And I knew that if I accepted this treatment, it meant that I would be accepting this treatment for all my fellow Muslim women. And that's something that was not okay to me because after the Patriot Act, the laws are so broad, they're so discriminatory, they're so racist against Muslim women, women of color, that they pretty much can do anything and get away with it scot free. And having this ability and giving it to the people in power is so dangerous because imagine I'm a US citizen and I got treated in the worst kind of ways possible. They asked me to be an informant to spy on my mosque. When I refused, they harassed me to the point where I was being strip searched. Dogs were unleashed on me. I was, my laptops were searched. Bomb squads would come out and take all my items. Like the trauma and terror of just flying. I used to fly for my school at Harvard, and I used to fly with family and my children. They would be taken away from me. They were little babies at the time. And it got to a point where I'm just like, I don't want to, fly anymore. I don't want to travel anymore. I wouldn't travel with my family anymore. And that really affects the way you live life. And at one point, I was like, this is unacceptable. How long am I going to continue living in fear? And so I got in touch with a couple organizations, and I went along with ACLU, which is a great organization to fight injustices in America. And we worked to file federal complaints, and we also did media campaigns. So I wrote op-eds, appeared in many interviews. I spoke at the ACLU conference and really rallied the support of the American people, which is Muslims and non-Muslims. Non-Muslims were my greatest allies, really. And a lot of petitions were passed around. I got an opportunity to go down to Florida. It was actually my first day at school at Harvard for the semester, and I skipped school and booked another ticket to Florida to confront members of Congress and FBI agents. And the same FBI agent who had taken me out and told me to be an informant and I refused was there. So I called him out in front of everyone. And after that event, the next day I was off the watch list. And then I was also part of a class action lawsuit against the US government for device search. They would search my devices illegally every time I'd fly. And we won that case. I'm one of the very few people in America that is protected from that. So I think that, like, just a main takeaway from this is that don't accept ill treatment towards you, no matter what. Like, we, especially as Muslim women, our religion teaches us about justice and justice to ourselves, that we should never be oppressed or face any kind of humiliation. So I think that would be my main takeaway, is fight for yourself. And in the same regard, you give other people the permission to do the same.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good news that you won the case, and I'm happy for that. And now I'm going to Canada again to Masla Tahir. My Hijab, My Rights campaign started from the hijab bans in Belgium. So would you please to explain us the latest update about hijab bans in Belgium?
Yeah. So it was, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Zainab, for sharing. You're incredibly, like, all of your experiences. It's very insightful, and you're very, very brave. So thank you for standing up on behalf of all of the Muslim community, because that's really what you did. And Sakal Khair, may Allah give you all the blessings and happiness and the courage to continue to fighting. So it was when I first heard of the Belgium Constitutional Court hearing ruling permitting the banning of hijabs on university existed in a 5-hour drive away from where I lived. And now I was hearing news of all these Muslim sisters in Belgium who now would have to make a decision to pursue an education based off of which school would allow them to continue to wear their hijab and pursue an education at the same time. And as an undergraduate student, as a student myself, this was something that was not okay with me whatsoever. It made me angry, made me upset. I couldn't understand how, in a world where the first university ever was founded by a Muslim woman, in that same world, Muslim women are being told that they cannot study at a university because of how they choose to dress and how they choose to practice their faith. And so, in solidarity with Muslim sisters inside of Belgium, is when we decided to organize a protest, organize a rally in downtown Toronto. And that's kind of where My Hijab, My Right started. Now, the latest update is actually a good one. So as of like a couple of weeks ago, actually, religious symbols, including the hijab, will be permitted in universities in the French-speaking Wallonia region of Belgium, starting September 2021. So this is a small victory in a long battle, as actually 1/3 of Europe has some sort of ban and limitations on the hijab. 1/3 of Europe has some sort of ban or limitation on the hijab. And so that's where our work continues. That's where our activism and this unity and this allyship will continue until there's no such thing as a hijab ban in the world.
So yeah, I'm so happy to hear this victory, and actually you did a great job, Masla. But I'm curious about something. How did your campus respond to your movement?
Yeah, so
have you got any support from your university?
Not the university specifically, because they aren't necessarily involved in like activism work. They're also grounded in academia work. However, we did get a lot of support on campus from my fellow students. I've actually also founded a project that raises youth voice inside of politics inside of Canada called Raise Your Voice. And so a lot of students on our campus actually helped in because although like the media might not be so vocal about, say, the silent oppression that continues to persist around the world in the form of hijab bans against Muslim women, it was really nice to see that as we continue our activism work, youth and other students are willing to listen and to rally with us in this cause and to learn and to understand.
Okay, so I believe you have received a lot of support from Muslim communities. So what have you got support from non-Muslim community?
Just kind of addressing the Muslim community first. So it was actually really interesting as we did outreach for the rally to hear that even leaders of like mosques within our Muslim community were not aware of the Belgium Constitutional Court ruling permitting the banning of hijabs on university campuses. A lot of them didn't understand what Bill 21 was about. So there is this huge knowledge gap even that persists within our Muslim community when it comes to Bill 21 and other hijab bans around the world. So it's almost like they've become numb to this concept and to this idea of hijab bans, of Muslim women and like hijabi women. It's like they hear the news or they don't hear the news, and it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. And so it's like we have to rally and educate and recreate that sense of urgency even within our Muslim community. And then there comes the problem of in Canada, it's the Muslim community is almost like segmented. So you have your like Pakistani mosques, and then you have your Arab mosques, and like even the Muslim community is very divided. So you have to reach out to different different religious leaders within the Muslim community to try to unite them all together. And at the end of the day, this is going to sound a little generic, but like at the end of the day, we're all Muslims. We're all Muslim sisters. It should equally impact us all. And so there shouldn't be a problem of having to bring together different segments of the Muslim community, because these hijab bans affect us all the same way. In terms of the non-Muslim community, we actually have allies within My Hijab, My Right who are non-Muslim, who advocate and support Muslim women's rights and who disagree with the demonization of the hijab in the media, who disagree with the way that we have been portrayed traditionally, and who are willing to stand beside us and fight as allies. And I think another panelist mentioned earlier, a segment
Both agree that this is something that you cannot take out of media. There will always be demonization, whether it be of hijab, whether it be of people of color. It's anything that is different than the white male will be demonized, because if you look back at even like developed it further than that. Journalism is still in the old perspective of what it was. I think now it's starting to change with independent media forms like Manar's show and Zainab and I's show, where we're trying to get past that bias in media. Bias is something that I think Manar also brought this up. Bias is something that is not because I'm wearing a hijab, then I'm going to be biased. You know, bias is in relation to the white male perspective. So if I am to come and give a story about a community of color or a Muslim community, I'm going to have to tell this story through the perspective of this Muslim community. I can't come and say that this story has to be told through that white male lens, or the white lens of what is right and what is objective and what is truthful, because that will no longer give substance to my story. I've had countless times where I go up to my professors, who were all white, in J school, and I give them a story and they go, but why is this relatable? Because it doesn't relate to their experiences. We need more people out there who are giving stories that relate to our experiences in order to take away that demonization aspect, so that we are able to tell our stories with our own pens, with our own voices. We can't expect someone who doesn't understand our journey or doesn't understand us and our experiences to do justice to our stories. It just doesn't make. And I really liked what Manar was saying earlier about, you know, it was actually like one of your white professors in school you mentioned. You can go ahead if you want.
Yeah,
Who has to also add to that.
Yes, please, if you want to add, please add, Nor.
Well, Fatima, you're you're explaining it very well, and I agree with you, and I appreciate you, mentioning that. It is, we have to pave our own way. We cannot continue to sit on the sidelines and expect the media to change its course, because it's not. Because our mainstream corporate media, Western corporate media, whether it's the UK, whether it's across Europe, whether it's even in the Middle East, whether it's right here in the United States, there are special interest groups that own and control the media. We don't have journalists anymore within corporate media, and I'm talking about like the CNNs, the Fox, the MSNBCs. I'm talking about the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the mainstream corporate media. These journalists are trained by think tanks that are funded by weapons manufacturers, by foreign governments. These are journalists that are trained by profit-driven industries to promote certain narratives. And so they are not working in the interest of the public anymore, like the old traditional ideas of journalism that is meant to protect we the people against the powers that be. This is media today that we have, media that's beating the drums of war, media that's basically a lapdog for those in power, when journalism is meant to actually hold the power to account. We don't have that anymore. And so the only way for us to break that barrier, to completely shatter the system, is for us, especially as Muslim women, to wear our hijab loud and proud, and to march forward. And if they won't accept us, because if they won't accept us, then we can create our own independent media outlets, like myself or like Fatima.
And we have to do that, I think.
We have to, and here's why. Because right now there is a media campaign to accept Muslim women, as long as you're a hot, sexy Instagram star, and as long as you are promoting the interests of the corporate class, as long as you are promoting the interests of corporatism and materialism, and you're showing off your Gucci bag and your couture, and your face is painted with makeup, and all of those things. Now, don't get me wrong, I wear pink. I love to look presentable, and I like a little bit of makeup here and there. I'm all about that freedom of expression. But where Muslim women are wanted is if we can promote the ideas of capitalism and consumerism. These are the ideas that actually hijab is meant to protect us against, so that we can detach from the materialisms of this world. And there are many instances where Muslim women are accepted within the mainstream, but the second they talk about Israeli occupation or oppression, or the second they talk about anti-war narratives, they are completely dismissed. They are dehumanized, and they are booted off of those campaigns, whether it's with makeup campaigns or movies or whatever. So we can be accepted. We can wear a hijab and be accepted within the mainstream as long as we continue to talk the talk within mainstream media that it's going to promote these ideals. And so if we truly believe in the message of hijab, which is, a sign of standing up against oppression, standing up against materialism and corporatism and consumerism, which is what hijab is meant to embody, then we would actually detach from the corporate media. I actually wanted to work at CNN when I was really young. That was my goal. I wanted to be an anchor on CNN because I wanted to shatter these stereotypes. But when I worked within corporate mainstream media, I was not allowed to speak. Just like Fatima mentioned, I was not allowed to report on the issues that I thought were important, that dealt with issues of war, issues of oppression against women and minority issues. And we do have this rise now, like I said, of hipster leftist kind of media that gives us this image that they are supportive of Muslim women's rights and so forth, but they're still parroting and promoting the dehumanization narratives, that the same narratives that are coming out of corporate mainstream media. And it's because it's what I like to call, actually I've covered this for the last few years, I call them hipster propaganda media outlets like BuzzFeed and Vice News. They come off as very open and loving towards minorities and so forth, but actually these organizations, they bash the very systems that we stand up for.
And don't forget, there's also a people of color scale, quota that they have to fulfill within these more media organizations. So you can't disregard that. Like, I remember walking into my internships at the National Post and CBC. At the National Post, I walked in and was like, okay, the interns fill out this quota of people of color. Everyone else is white or Asian. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, they're white or they looked white. And then when I walked into CBC, I was like, this is great. This is the CBC Muse, right? And then when I was in there, I started seeing, yes, there are stories that are multicultural, that are telling these perspectives. There are people of color, but there isn't enough that is changing within the core of this institution. And don't forget, these are institutions that need to make money. Journalism is an industry that is not making money anymore if they don't have advertisers. When they have these advertisers, they have this revenue, and advertisers will actually ask for certain things. As an institution, you have to fill out this quota. Now Muslims are the new big thing. Now Muslims and being in hijab is more trendy. It's trending a little bit more. So we are seeing people come up, show up, but these journalists as well, like I don't want to disregard the journalists that actually are doing a lot of good work. If they want to get into that mainstream media or break through that door, then they have to work 70 times more than everyone else to show that, I am worth you taking the risk of putting someone in hijab in your media.
I want to add something to that.
Yeah.
I think that it's so important, Fatima, that we brought this up, because Manar actually is one of my personal heroes growing up. And I remember back in 2015, around that time, when Yemen and all that was going on, I was a children's author, and I had just written my book, and it was actually about hijab, that book. And it just put me in that mindset that the hijab really makes us detached from materialism, from the worldly life, kind of, and makes us really embed that identity that we're Muslim, we submit to God. Our devotion of faith is literally on our heads. And it really put that perspective. Then when I saw Manar, with her news and her coverage on global injustices, I was like, this is what Muslim women are all about. Like, we're brave, and this our identity is literally that. And like you guys said, we've always been depicted as just people who don't do serious work, right? We're either fashion influencers or even hijab influencers, but the moment that you see women, doing like leading organizations, starting up Mint Press News, starting up this new founded organization, TMJ, the Muslim Journalists, this is an actual threat, because now you're seeing Muslim women taking back the narrative and talking about things that are really important. So I think it's very important to bring that up, and to all Muslim women watching this, not watching this, like, you can really do a lot if you just dream big and go for it, because that's really what our faith is about.
Yes, actually, I totally agree with Nar, and I noted what Fatima said, that if people don't experience the same thing with us, it will be hard to make them understand what we feel. And also, Zainab and Fatima, as you work together to build the Muslim journalist. So I'm curious about what kind of impact you wish to happen through the Muslim journalist. Maybe from Zainab first, and then Fatima. What kind of impact you wish to happen through the Muslim journalist?
So this is what happened with so I'm in my last semester of Harvard, and I speak to a lot of my colleagues, and a lot of them are actually professional journalists who have worked for many years, and they're getting their master's degree. Very smart, bright people. And when I spoke to them, and they're non-Muslim, but they want to do good work in life. They want to report on issues like Palestine, for example. And one of my colleagues, she told me that she has tried for about 6 years in her career to speak about these issues that are important to her, but they get slapped down every time. And so every year she says to herself, I'm going to build a name for myself. I'm going to build a name for myself. And then when I'm big, I'm going to talk about it. And she's like, Zainab, that time never came. And so before I ended my semester, I was like, okay, I'm in trouble now, because I went to school for 5 years to talk about important things, not things like, like dolphins or the royal family in Britain, which is all people seem to be talking about and wanting to know about. There's things happening around in Yemen and Palestine, Kashmir, and nobody seems to be talking about that. So I'm like, I'm not going to take that chance. And then, I spoke to Sister Fatima. She interviewed me for a show, and
We have just met.
we had just met, but it was like, I don't know, like, it was just destiny. It was meant to happen. And one day over a bonfire at her house, we were like, we need to do something. I can't take this chance of going into a media organization and having my stories killed, because that's not what the organization and their agenda fits into. And that really, just the idea of creating something together where two journalists who've worked in this field. I may be doing journalism as a graduate study, but I've been reporting news and talking about things for about 10 years now. And we've gotten a lot of experience. So we said, we're going to take back the narrative. And just the idea of that was so empowering that, I've grown up post 9/11 as an 8, 9-year-old girl who had just started wearing the hijab, who wanted to be invisible for a lot of my life. I just wanted to survive, basically, the day. I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to look at me. I just wanted to get through the day. And now, I'm at this point where I want people to see our stories, and I want people to look at our Muslim community, and for us to examine ourselves within our communities and make these connections, talk about things that are important, things that pertain to us, right? By us, Muslim issues covered by Muslim journalists. And I just feel like, people can make a big difference, and media is such a powerful tool that shapes ideas. Really, it's thoughts and ideas, and that really shape people's actions. So I really truly hope that the Muslim journalist, I believe, is going to go far, inshallah, just like Mint Press News has. And we really hope that in the future we can have a lot more journalists, especially female journalists who are Muslim, to join our teams and really propel our issues and things that are important to us.
And
All
creating
right. So thank you for
Sorry.
sharing your insight. And Fatima, do you have something to say about the Muslim
Yes,
journalist?
that's a quick thing to add. I think creating this platform, we really wanted to also create that mentorship for females like us who, you know, for me, I started out thinking, okay, I'm going to get into engineering or architecture. You know, that's the best thing to get into. And obviously, being Arab, like that was the best thing to get into. But I think when I really looked at what I loved, I realized that I really loved storytelling. I really loved understanding people, learning about different communities, learning about different experiences, and shedding light on that. I really loved having conversations with people. So I wanted, Zainab and I both wanted to also be those role models for the females who are Muslim who want to get into this field. I was met with a lot of like Manar, a lot of like, oh, you want to get into journalism, but from people from my community. When I was growing up, I was bullied for the way I wear my hijab from people who are within my community, mostly the kids in our community. And that was something that I was always proud of, wearing my hijab proudly. Always, like, it never affected me, mostly because my mother always told me, you know, this is your hijab, this is your story. You have to be the person that you are, no matter who is telling you not to be that person. So I think we're trying to bring forward our perspectives as Muslims and as people who have lived in the West. It's very different to be a Muslim living in the Western society because you are met with so many different people around you. So to create that acceptance, we have to take that first step, and that's what we're trying to achieve with the Muslim journalists, inshallah.
Fatima, I just wanted to add one thing. You know, we've talked about this idea of Orientalism so much. You know, Said's theory of Orientalism in 1978, which talks about how the Western media really paints a backward image of Muslims, that, you know, we're barbaric, we're backwards, we're unable to fit into their society. And it's that vision, imagine, it's that lens that these media outlets are really coming from. And we wanted to take that back. I think that's very important to say, is that a lot of our media today is fear mongering. It's really fear mongering because it sells. War, terror, these are things that are top of the list of the news cycle. And even though life is not that negative, you know, the news makes us feel like, you know, anxiety, like this is what's happening 24/7. And even the idea, for example, of terrorism, right? Terrorism is so subjective. The idea of terrorism, the definition, I took classes on terrorism. One of my degrees is Homeland Security, and it's just from that white narrative. You know, we have, like Manar shed light on, homegrown domestic terrorism by white supremacists. They just invaded the capital. Imagine if Muslims ever did that. We wouldn't even think about doing that, right? But they're not going to be called terrorists. They're not going to be painted with that general paintbrush. And so I think that it's very important to take back that narrative, because we want to change that lens that we're coming from. Because Islam, at the end of the day, we have this basic view, everyone, that killing one life is killing all of humanity. That just coming from that lens, you're going to talk about everything differently, because even then terrorism becomes like a sensitive issue where you're looking at the complexities rather than painting everyone with the same brush.
Right, yeah. I believe the Muslim journalist was born to change the situation to get better, you know. And everyone, I'm going to tell everyone who are here that World Hijab Day needs your continued support throughout the year. There are lots of projects and initiatives World Hijab Day wants to start to empower women, and to empower women all around the world. And for doing that, we need your ongoing support. And please take the opportunity to donate. And all of about the donation details will be uploaded on the World Hijab Day organization social media. And I'm going to show all of you, girls, sisters, and brothers who are watching this conference, a beautiful video with a beautiful message on it.
Hijab is not something you should be ashamed of, feel afraid, or allow others to make you take off. I'm sorry if I've ever made you feel that way. And I apologize if I've ever made you feel unsafe. I guess we judge each other too quickly. And we forget to focus on our own imperfections, on our journeys. We never know when life can take us in the same states. Because yeah, we are deeply saddened, but our words have a huge part to play. I mean, if you see a sister struggling, support her, educate her, and with show her the way. Honor passed down from our greatest women to our women.
All right, that's a video of here who have been watching us. And actually, I want to say thank you for everyone who are here for supporting the World Hijab Day conference. And I'm going to read some positive comments. Thank you for everyone who have given positive comments to us. So I'm going to read a comment from okay, Amina bint Insa. She said, "Mashallah, I hope they will share the video." All right, and then the comment from Sister Ola Nosir. This is excellent. May Allah bless you all. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Sister Ola. And there's a sister from Philippines, Sister Bai Johani Chukai. Okay, she said, "I'm watching here from Qatar." Okay, hi Qatar. You're Philippine, but in Qatar. Okay, and from Andalusi, she said, "Happy World Hijab Day 2021 to all Muslims." All right, thank you. Happy World Hijab Day. And Sister Amira Smith, she said, "I adore this. It's so well put together." All right. And there's someone from Indonesia, Nikmatus Soliha. She said, "Can't wait this event. I'm from Indonesia. I really support this event." Thank you, Nikma, for being here. Actually, in Indonesia, it's like midnight. And I will read some more. Sister Manar, do you want to say something to everyone who are watching us? So many positive comments here. Here, Sister Dini, thank you to all beautiful sister for sharing and making us all hijabers look more beautiful inside and out. And we definitely are strong women and spreading love and kindness to the world. So, Manar, do you want to respond to these positive messages?
Yes, first, I just want to say thank you for everybody who's watching from all around the world, and to World Hijab Day for organizing this very important conference. We've made it a very, very long way in, standing up and marching our way through within the media to change the media landscape and narrative about Muslim women. And I feel very humbled for the positions that I've taken within media. You know, what I did for the work that I do, you know, to challenge these negative stereotypes was really through the pain and trauma that I had felt that most of us already are feeling today. And so if I can do it, if I can find that strength through that trauma, then I know that everybody else can do it too. And one thing we have to remember is that our voice is so strong, and we have such a bright light shining out of our heart and our souls when we wear hijab, and we need to wear our hijab so proud and so loud. And remember that a lot of times that when we have these negative negative thoughts about how other people perceive us, it's usually because of how these negative stereotypes have affected us. That's why these perceptions have exist. It's so that they can attempt to weaken us, but we have to say that this is not okay. We don't accept this, and we have to find that strength within ourselves, because we as Muslim women are such a strength. We are such a bright light within this dunya, and so we have to remember that and use that as our power to not just stand up for the ideas of hijab, but to stand up against oppression, to spread the ideas of love and unity and compassion. And as Muslim women, we have to stand together and unite and support each other. And so I really appreciate everybody for watching and sharing that support towards me and all the other speakers here. I feel very humbled to be speaking with all these lovely, trailblazing, empowered women that are on this panel. Like, I feel so humbled to hear their stories. So thank you.
Thank you, Manar. And also, Imam Shamsi Ali is a Muslim leader in New York, and he's Indonesian. He's watching us right now and put some positive comments. He said, World Hijab Day is all about women, and it's about freedom, liberation, devotion, power, choice, identity, pride, love, sacrifice, and many more. So, Masla, do you want to give your response to Imam Shamsi Ali's comments? She's a Muslim leader in New York.
I just wanted to say Jazakallah khair, everyone in the comment section, for all of your kind and humbling comments. I know when some of the panelists were talking about earlier, it really is, it's a struggle to wear your hijab, but it also is at the same time so incredibly beautiful. I think if we just shift our narrative to take the hijab and this opportunity and this panel and this platform to be like, we are the image and the representation of Islam that the youth need right at this moment in time, that the non-Muslims in the world who see contrasting images of Muslims, right? They see what the media represents us as, and then they see us on this panel, empowered, young, and humbling and kind and hardworking, just incredible, inspiring women. They see contrasting images and they see the reality versus what they wish and what they try to portray us as. And so, Imam Shamsi Ali, Jazakallah khair for your kind comments. It really is about freedom and liberation, that we as Muslim women, we are free to practice our religion and we choose to wear our hijab. And to us, it is beautiful, and to us, it is our power, and it is our pride. It's our sacrifice to Allah, and it's our struggle, and we do it with pride, and we do it with piety. So, just lovely, kind words from everyone, and again, so humbled and so empowered to be on this panel with such incredible women. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Masla, for your response to Imam Shamsi Ali and everyone who are watching us. And there's someone say, her name is Karina Rinaru Clark. Okay, she said, as a non-Muslim woman, I'm wearing hijab to support World Hijab Day. I support the World Hijab Day. Thank you so much, Karina. And Zainab, do you want to say something to Karina? She's non-Muslim and support us and wearing hijab for us.
I think that's beautiful. I think it's great to have allies in support of us. And just for everyone watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting World Hijab Day, and all the beautiful women who wear their hijab proudly. For all the women who unfortunately have experienced trauma, not just from outside, but even in their own homes. I know many women are not allowed to wear the hijab by parents or by their husbands or whoever. They're oppressed with their choice of wearing the hijab. Women who are abused on the subways, at schools, bullied. We hear about stories all the time, especially as journalists, and it's really heartbreaking. So I think that it's beautiful for people of all faiths and backgrounds to stand up and to show their support for this, because as much as we don't want to say it, really it is an act of bravery these days to even wear the hijab, because of what you could potentially face. The Islamophobia around the world is unreal. It's at unprecedented levels. I feel that it's even worse than when it was during 9/11, because it's everywhere now. And I think that it's amazing to see the support from all levels, and to everyone who's struggling with their hijab. I've been there. I've contemplated many times, because it is sometimes you do fear for your life. You don't want to be hit or abused or go through all of that. And just my heart goes out to everyone, and lots of love and support from me.
Thank you, Zainab, for your kind words. And Fatima, here, Eka Shinta said, avoid of being victim posture, build more winner mentality characters of us. So Fatima, what will you say to respond?
I think that's extremely important to raise, is that we need to avoid being that victimized person within the media, within our friend circles as well. I remember in journalism school, most of the time I was bringing awareness to, my hijab, telling my friends there who I am, what our religion has to offer. And now they are the people who are defending, Muslim women in hijab. They are journalists who are out there. I mean, if we can create that information and space for people to learn from our experiences as well, I think that will cause more awareness, and that empowers us as well. It starts with your own little tight circles, and it starts to expand.
All right. Thank you, Fatima, for your response. And thank you, everyone who are still here with us. And I want to kindly tell you again about the donation. World Hijab, they need your continuous support throughout the year. There are lots of projects and initiatives that World Hijab they wants to start to empower women all around the world. And for doing that, we need your ongoing support. And please take the opportunity to donate. And you can see all the details about the donation on World Hijab Day social media. And I'm going to continue our discussion again, Fatima, Zainab, Masla, and Manar. And I'm going to start with Manar. So Manar, I watched news about the knife attack that killed 3 people at the church in Nice, France on October 2020. So actually, I tried to compare how the journalists in some media cover this story, and I conclude that they had similar narrative. I noticed that they explained us that the perpetrator said Allahu Akbar. So I watched that. So my question is, as the consequence of this news, getting labeled as terrorists seems inevitable for Muslims. So what we can do to remove this misperception about Islam?
Well, I think we've established early on in this conversation that the use of the word terrorist and labeling any sort of Muslim violence versus not labeling violence perpetrated by white supremacists, for example, as terrorism, is an example of how the word terrorism is weaponized within media. It's used to divide. It's used to justify, the dehumanization of the Muslim man so that we can justify wars abroad. And so the best way to reject this kind of notion, or to reshape the landscape of the use of the word terrorist in the proper way, is to identify a couple of things. Number one is who is weaponizing the word terrorist. And it is the state. It is the corporate mainstream media that represents the interests of the state. When the state perpetrates terrorism or violence against citizens across the globe, for example, when the United States invaded Iraq and Afghanistan and killed nearly 2 million people in both of those countries, I did not hear the media label those acts of violence as terrorism, when in fact what we did was we terrorized those people in those countries. And so we have to really, truly get to the root cause and the root of this word, terrorism, and why it's being used the way it is, and actually identify what exactly is terrorism. And once we do that, we will understand the propaganda that is being perpetrated against the masses of the public, so that we, the people, can be divided and be divisive and be afraid of what we would like to consider as the other, the uncivilized, the backwards kind of culture or people or religion, which is Islam and Muslim men and Muslim women. And so once we're able to identify that, we as a people can unite on a broader front to stand up against this propaganda that's being perpetrated against the people, because all it is a divide and conquer agenda to divide us so that we people can fight each other while the state and the elite and the 1% billionaire class and the profiteers of these war mechanisms can continue to profit and can continue to pursue their agenda of exploitation and war abroad and expansion of military and arms trade, etc. The other thing we have to identify is, or the other thing that we need to do is, we as Muslims, and I think we've kind of established this as well, is that we have to become the media. We cannot rely on the mainstream corporate media anymore for truthful information, because we know for a fact that they are perpetrating these narratives. They're crafting these narratives to dehumanize. I gave a presentation a couple of years ago about Islamophobia, and Islamophobia is, I believe, I think it's like a $6 billion industry in the United States. It's an actual industry, Islamophobia, and it is being used to racket up profits for industries that would benefit from pushing anti-Muslim narratives. And as I mentioned before, one of the main actually groups that profits off of this narratives are pro-Israel groups that profit off of pushing anti-Muslim narratives because it kind of keeps this image within media that Muslims are perpetrators of violence, and it kind of distracts from ongoing occupation and apartheid within Israel. The other group is very obvious, which is right-wing neoconservative and neoliberal groups within the establishment class within the United States, who are profiteering off of war, like the weapons manufacturers that I've established. And so we have to take it upon ourselves to not necessarily boycott corporate media, but we have to take a stance within media to say we have to turn to independent media and support independent media and to build independent media. And if we're going to join corporate media, we have to be able to be strong and to stand up to these narratives without being corporate media. You know, when I joined corporate, when I started out my career, I started out as a journalist that worked at a news station for NBC. It was KARE 11, located in Minneapolis. And that led me to leave that industry and say, you know what, if I'm about what I want to speak about, and all I'm going to end up doing is just blend right in to like everybody else. And that's not why I joined media. The whole point of me joining media was to challenge these stereotypes and to break barriers and to build bridges, but they weren't allowing me to do that. And so we have to recognize that if we're going to want change, we have to get uncomfortable. We have to get uncomfortable. And sometimes that means doing our own thing and setting up for what we believe in. And sometimes our own friends and our own family are gonna turn against us. But as long as we are standing up for justice and what we believe in, that's really all that should matter at the end of the day. And so to challenge these ideas of terms like terrorists is, we have to embody the true message of what a Muslim woman is and what a Muslim man is, and march forward and represent those things within, get on our own soapbox and become that voice so that we can rehumanize what a Muslim woman and a Muslim man are, so that we can end this use and weaponizing of the use of the term terrorist.
All right. So, but Manar, most of the time the perpetrators always say Allahu Akbar, according to what I watch on the news. So, what do you think about it? What do you think that the perpetrators always say Allahu Akbar during the actions? Actually, saying Allahu Akbar, it's like refers to Muslim, right? It's like explaining I'm a Muslim.
Right. And so, I've never read anywhere in the Quran or the Hadith or in the examples of the Ahlul Bayt or the Prophet Muhammad and his Sunnah of, somebody yelling Allahu Akbar and then going murdering somebody. So whenever we hear the media, kind of really showing like, oh my gosh, this man is yelling Allahu Akbar and then he's murdering these people, we have to really look at the politicization of these terror attacks. And so we talked about terror, the word terrorist. Now we have to look at the terrorism that's being perpetrated under the banner of Islam. Who are these groups? Who's funding them? How is the media using them for their justifications of, the things that I had mentioned before? And so if we look at groups like ISIS, who take a lot of credit for these terrorist attacks, we have to, like, MIT Press, for example, has been one of the leading news organizations for the last, I would say, 10 years, but even since the inception of ISIS in the last 8 years, in really digging deeper into the creation of these terror groups like Al-Qaeda, the history of Al-Qaeda being created by the United States in Afghanistan to overthrow the Soviet Union. And the same thing with ISIS, how the United States, through proxy, not directly, but through proxy and indirectly, through its allies within Turkey, within, Saudi Arabia or Qatar or whatever country we have here, that we are indirectly funding and arming these groups. And so again, it's the media playing this divisive role in dehumanizing Muslims and taking such a beautiful statement like Allahu Akbar, which is, Allah is greater. Allah is greater. That's what Allahu Akbar means. Allah, which is God, our Lord, He is greater than everything in this world. And just using that to make such a beautiful statement sounds so horrific and horrible. And because most people don't speak Arabic, they just go with it. They hear this, becomes a trigger word for them.
Manar, the word Allahu Akbar, it's I feel like it's almost like abused now. Like Fatima was telling me something about like how, can you explain that, Fatima, about the Muslim?
Remember, I think the attack in Montreal, the Avignon killer, he actually shouted Allahu Akbar and was not Muslim. He was a white supremacist, and that's how that word is.
And they cycled and recycled that news to make it seem like
they kept replaying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And it was just that term and that word that was being used and that phrase that was being abused in order to justify his killing of these people, which is incredibly disheartening and makes us just, I don't know.
So Manar, how are we even supposed to like tackle that? Like,
because I believe we have to embody and educate the people. We have to educate people. And I do believe that the majority of people, if you look at a lot of Pew studies and research studies, I would say, for the last, almost 10 years consecutively, these Pew studies and research studies on media show that over 70% of American population, I'm speaking from an American perspective, don't trust the mainstream corporate media, which shows that there's a lot of distrust within media. And so this is an opportunity. We should take this as an opportunity to educate people. I mean, I get invited regularly to give panel discussions, to give presentations, to be a keynote speaker, to talk about, challenging these media narratives. And I bring up the phrase Allahu Akbar. I bring up the phrase, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I bring up those trigger words that are in the media when in fact they're actually these beautiful statements within our religion that show just how peaceful Islam really is. And we educate people. And I cannot tell you how many people come to me after these events and they're like, you have completely changed my perspective about what Islam is, about media demonization, about wars, what it is that, how we're subconsciously being trained to be divisive and to have these stereotypes in the back of our heads. And I help shatter those. And it has to be through these narratives that we're sharing and through these experiences like the ones that you guys are all sharing today. And so that's really what it comes down to, is we have to get up and speak, and not just speak to the people who already know these things, because that's a challenge too. We end up speaking, it's like an echo chamber. We're just speaking to the people who want to hear this stuff. No, let's go talk to white supremacists. Let's go talk to communities, and I'm being very serious. Go talk to communities who need to hear this. We have to put ourselves out there. I've done this before. I've sat in a room with white supremacists who hate Muslims. Never met a Muslim. I was the first Muslim they had ever met. And they literally ended the event hugging me, thanking me, embracing me, because they were filled with so much fear. That's really what it was. It was just fear that they were being fed through their media. And all they had to do was just see a Muslim. At the beginning, were they skeptical and angry? Of course. But I didn't let that stop me from embracing them, from smiling and trying to engage and using that positive, loving energy that we have as Muslims. A lot of times we get in these situations and we get defensive and we get scared and we're like, oh my gosh, our negative perceptions start to take over our brains, and then we can't connect with these people. But let's shatter those. Let's even break our own paradigms so that we can have these connections with people. And know that a lot of people are just confused. They're victims of this mainstream media propaganda. If we give them this call, they will be open to embrace us if we allow them to. So we need to engage with people. And when we engage, we're actually telling the state, the corporate media, the ones that are trying to divide us, that they're not winning. We are winning by uniting together.
Manar, I loved what you just said about just changing our own lens, because I was up last night. Actually, I'll make a small observation, but I was up late last night reading up on the Prophet, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how he was just this beautiful embodiment of ethics. And there was so many like paragraphs about his description and his mannerisms and how he didn't hate anyone, and even people who had like a negative perception of him, like he was just so jolly and cheerful. He always smiled, and he just went to people who hated him and feared him and what they had heard about him. And it really like brought what you're saying to perspective today, because a lot of times we are our own worst enemies, because we think that everyone hates us, so we hide behind that fear ourselves. Exactly. And that's what really perpetuates the cycle of ignorance and fear.
And that's why in every time I was asked the question, I said it has to start with us first. We have to break our own paradigms. Exactly. And find that strength and courage and that light within ourselves. As long as we love the hijab so much, then we can embody that love outward.
So, Fatima, Zainab, and Manar, so the words Allahu Akbar was being misused then. Is it true?
Yeah.
One thing actually, Trifty, can I answer one of the comments here?
Sure.
From Samira Ibrahim. She says that at my kids' high school, non-Muslim kids shout Allahu Akbar as a joke and make the Muslim kids uncomfortable. This was pre-COVID. I think that's very important to raise, because kids are experiencing this within schools. And I think there's so much that we can teach our children to really bring forward information and make these kids, because kids are very influenced by what they see around them. So when they see something in the media, they see what their parents are talking about, they see what their communities are talking about, then they meet this Muslim kid within their school. Of course they're going to be negative towards this Muslim kid who they don't know anything about. If kids can be this influence, then we need to start with the kids trying to inform them. We need to teach our children how to speak about Islam, why Islam is so important, what Allahu Akbar means, what Bismillah means. Try to bring this closer to them so they can bring it closer to their friends and their communities, and the people that are around them. I think it all starts with that awareness. I actually had an interview on the You Mentor Talk Show, just to give a little bit about that. The You Mentor Talk Show, I speak to professionals who are Muslims within very high fields, and they speak about their experiences and journeys through their careers and the different professions that they're in, just to inspire our community to get into more professions than just engineering and being doctors and being lawyers. So I spoke with a brother who actually lived in Arkansas, and he was the only Muslim within a white supremacist area. And all of the people within his town now know that, we had a Muslim friend within our school. This is not Islam. He was Islam. He was the representation of Islam. And I think that's the best way to start. We start with our children, we start with our communities, and we start with the people who are around us.
All right, thank you, Fatima, Manar, and Zainab for insightful explanation. Now from United States, I'm going back to Canada to Masla. Masla, through My Hijab, My Right, you are currently gathering hijab stories on My Hijab, My Right account, right? So would you please to share the most interesting hijab story that you got from people?
Yeah, so we were just, this campaign about My Hijab Story was really about taking everything that Fatima, Zainab, and Nar, we've been talking about, taking that narrative and taking it into your own hands and being that voice and being the representation to break the stereotypes, to be the representation. That's kind of what My Hijab Story was all about. That entire campaign was collecting and sharing stories of hijabi sisters within our community. And I guess there isn't like one specific story that really stood out. It was more so just a culmination of the positive experiences that were outlined in the sharing of these hijab stories. Like Muslim women talking about how on campuses or just within the larger community, they felt like they were part of something bigger. They felt like they were part of this community that really embraced them and that loved them because they were Muslim. They felt that even within the workplace, certain Muslims, because they were visibly Muslim, be like, hey, let me, like, they would reach out and be that arm of support to a fellow Muslim just because they wore a hijab. So there was more so like smaller, really like impactful, positive moments of, Muslim women talking about how they feel like they're part of this broader, bigger sisterhood, this bigger community because they wear the hijab. In that, I was kind of embracing for the worst. With this campaign, I was expecting, a lot of really negative experiences of just like hate-filled experiences. However, the positive stories from Muslim sisters actually outweighed the negative experiences, and it just showed the beauty of wearing and embracing our hijab and being part of this broader community. And it was actually really quite beautiful to see. I can like read the little passage. So this is from a sister, anonymous story. As a hijabi, I feel seen and honored by other Muslims every day. In university, my Muslim classmates and TAs went above and beyond in supporting me and helping me succeed in my degree because I was their sister. Throughout my job hunting journey, Muslim acquaintances have referred me to their workplaces in order to support and elevate the community. In my day-to-day, Muslims who are otherwise strangers to me greet me with a kind smile and salam when meeting in public, establishing safe spaces for me to exist as a visible Muslimah with confidence that I have an entire community of brothers and sisters supporting me along every step of the way. And it just, that is what the hijab is about, right? Like that is what World Hijab Day is all about. It's about coming together and being that representation and saying, no, this is my choice, this is my hijab, and I love it. And we are part of this broader Muslimah together in unity, and it just quite genuinely is really beautiful.
All right, thank you for sharing one of their stories. But what about your story? What's your hijab story? Have you experienced discrimination before because of your hijab?
Um, my hijab story, it's nothing compared to what Zainab you've shared today. It's like, I think the community that I've grown up in, um, it's not as hasn't been as polarizing. However, there was this, I think, a lot. So I started wearing the hijab in my first year of university, and I remember like going out to we have a dollar store. I just went to get like snacks that same day without my hijab on, because it was like that day that I like decided to put it on. I went to the dollar store to grab some snacks, and it was just a regular day. I was just like, another person. Um, and I come back, and I had to go back to the same store, literally in the span of a couple of hours. And that was when I was like, I got the courage to put it on. I was like, Masla, just put on your hijab and just go. I wrap the hijab around my head, and I go back to the same store a couple of hours later. And I remember walking in, and it was like this, this spotlights had just been like focused onto me. And now I'm walking into the same store a couple of hours later, and I walk down the toy aisle, and this like woman literally, she sees me and she gathers her children like closer to herself and like gives me like stay away from my kids. And I am like I love kids. And I'm always like very smiling, and I'm very happy, and it just like shook me to my core. I was like, I'm still me. Like, I'm still Masla that walked into this exact same store a couple of hours earlier. How are you literally like how are you hiding your kids from me just because I have a piece of cloth on my head? Like, how does that make any sense? And it was a lesson, right? The first time I put on the hijab, it was a lesson that people are going to know that you are Muslim before they know your name. As the hijabi, this goes for all of us. They know that we're Muslim before they know our name. And that is why this topic that we're talking about today, this demonization of the hijab in media, not just, we've talked a lot about news media, but we haven't touched upon the way that the hijab is represented inside of movies, inside of TV shows, inside of video games, right? Like, that is what the children, the youth are having exposure to first, oftentimes in isolated communities where there aren't any Muslim representations, right? A positive Muslim representation of first-hand experiences. The first time they're ever seeing a Muslim is on a TV show like Hala or Quantico or Cuties or
A TV show where they take off the hijab, like
for a
episodes in.
Yeah, yeah. Those are the first, like interactions that they have with representation that they have of Muslim women, and so it's almost like it's changing the neural pathways inside of their brains in terms of their association with the hijab and this like oppressed, very soft-spoken woman who can't speak up for herself, who is oppressed. Like, these neural connections in the subconscious, they're formed as they're watching these TV shows. And
it's not just like, sorry to cut you off, it's not just that the hijab is shown in that portrayal. The only positive way they can show the hijab is to show that someone has to take it off in order to save a life, or someone has to, take it off in order to be accepted, or if she is wearing hijab, she will like the white boy, and then it's too much. It's too much for us because we don't have that we don't have that representation within this media yet, within Hollywood, within, these films that are going out there.
Yeah, and so all of those like subconscious interpretations of what the hijab represents are embedded within them, whether they consider themselves like someone can be outwardly, I'm not Islamophobic. I love, I support your faith and you, and I respect or practicing your faith, but at the same time, on this deeper subconscious level, they have these associations of who you are with the hijab on. And so the first time I put on my hijab, I understood that I was now Muslim before I was Masla, and that when people saw me or when I interacted with individuals, I was interacting with them as a Muslim first and foremost, and then Masla second. And then it becomes and develops into this responsibility, into this almost like weight that's on your shoulders now. Okay, every single time you go work out at the gym, anytime you're working as a barista, anytime you're attending lectures in class, anytime you're on the school bus, out on the streets in the supermarket, you are representing Muslims first and foremost. You are the representation of Muslim women first and foremost. And so I take that responsibility with pride, with honor, as and very humbled, and I continue to try my best to be that representation every single day as I wear my hijab. That is.
Thank you, Masla, for sharing your hijab stories. But Masla, like Bill 21 has made people feel like, a second-class citizen with limited rights. And, sometimes people will feel increasingly un-Canadian with this Bill 21. So are there any part of authority, like politicians, who are aware about this issue and stand for racialized communities?
Yeah, so actually, I want to quickly touch upon the hijab ban in France, actually. So the hijab ban in France, I believe, was first proposed in 2001, and they've had time to do longitudinal studies on the hijab ban in France. And so while it was initially proposed as a ban that would promote the successful acclimation of Muslim women into French society, through longitudinal studies, they've actually found that it does exactly the opposite. It isolates Muslim women inside of French society. And it actually decreases the likelihood of them getting a higher education, of them successfully acclimating into the workforce because of the hijab ban in France. And so now we have this research as evidence that shows that hijab bans do exactly the opposite of what they're proposed to do. And so now Bill 21 was interpreted in like a similar lens, as in we're establishing a secular state. We want to get rid of religious symbols in the workforce. It's going to help everyone feel more accepted and everyone be the same under, say, government, working in government. However, as we've seen in France, the trend is quite the same. I live in Ontario, don't live in Quebec, so I don't have the firsthand experience of what Muslim women inside of Quebec are going through because of Bill 21. However, the trends and the patterns are quite similar as what Muslim women inside of France have experienced and continue to now experience inside of Quebec. In terms of political support, actually, the leader of the New Democratic Party inside of Canada, Jagmeet Singh, he wears a turban. He's a visible minority. And as a Canadian citizen, he also lives in Quebec. He also is impacted by Bill 21 and is quite outspoken in terms of his outspoken against Bill 21, as well as our current Prime Minister. He also is not in support of Bill 21, but again, because of the legal proceedings and how long the process is going to be, there is limited work that they can do besides kind of presenting their outward disapproval of the bill. So yeah, that's kind of where the political leadership is at right now.
All right. Hopefully, all of the situations in Canada going better soon. And now going back to journalism topic, I'm going to ask Nar. Nar, what are the challenges of being hijabis and journalists at the same time?
That's a really great question, because we talked a lot about challenging those stereotypes and rising above, and working within media. And a lot of times people think, well, oh, you made it, you work in media, oh, you made it, you became the first hijabi journalist, it must be going so well for you. And in a lot of aspects, it is going so well, because I'm continuing to do the work that I do. But challenging these stereotypes do not end. From the very beginning of when I launched Mint Press, I was treated with suspicion by other Western journalists. I was targeted in smear campaigns because I take a very anti-war stance in like our international coverage, for example. And we do a lot of reporting on the think tanks and the weapons manufacturers and how they're influencing policies. I was actually personally targeted in a smear campaign. Myself and my in-laws were targeted, and my entire family was targeted in a smear campaign with articles upon articles written about me and how I'm like secretly an agent of like Hamas, secretly an agent of Hezbollah, secretly an agent of Iran, secretly an agent of the Syrian government, and where is she getting her funding, and where how is Manar she can't be this smart in her reporting. There must be, somebody who's like kind of, pushing information to her, and all of these things. And so that treatment of suspicion doesn't end, and it continues. In fact, our Wikipedia page at Mint Press was targeted in attacks, and we had people rewriting it over and over again to kind of create this caricature that of those same things that I was accused of. And so those things don't end in terms of demonization. And so that's part of the job, though. We have to understand that the fight is not over. Once we get in and we establish ourselves as journalists within within this platform, it doesn't end. And there is a broader agenda at play that's taking place that is encouraging censorship and silencing, and under the guise of fighting fake news and hate speech and white supremacy and all of those things. And so we have to really be careful about supporting those agendas in general. But I had an article written about me for maybe 5 or 6 years ago that said that I tell my employees, the female employees, that they're not allowed to wear low-cut shirts and tank tops and stuff, and they have to speak a certain way. And that's obviously not true, but it was like this way to portray me as this super conservative, controlling person and telling people how to dress. But in fact, the articles that were being written about me were doing that exact same thing. And so the irony is very, very real, and we do have to have very thick skin. Remember that when you are standing up for justice and for truth, a lot of times you're going to feel very, very alone. And that's part of the broader agenda to dehumanize and demonize Muslim women and their hijabs. When you are standing up for justice and the truth, you will be isolated. And so that's a very common thing that happens.
Thank you for sharing that, Manar. It's so inspiring actually for everyone, because here are journalists. Everyone here is journalists. And also, Fatima, with the new president in United States, will it be a little hope for a better future for United States? What's your opinion?
I don't think so, only because this is still the same institution. It's still the same government. It's still the same constitution that we've had ever since, America was built. I don't think anything will change. Even in countries that aren't America or Canada, if we speak about countries within the Middle East, if we talk about any of the countries around the world, Muslims are becoming people who are seen as, not becoming, they are people who are seen as oppressed, who are less accepted. I have family in the Middle East, and they've told me that for them, they're starting to experience more that people who are without hijab, or people who are more I think trendy hijab are given more opportunities, and are given more of that space to be able to get into different jobs, which is so interesting because you look at that like, okay, it's not just happening within America, it's not just happening within Canada, it's happening all over the world. And what's the cause? It's not one president, it's not one person, it's not one institution, it's everywhere. So there's, I think, a deeper thing we have to look at, and we have to see how can we better that representation? How can we better show that we as Muslim women are not oppressed? You know, my hijab isn't my choice. My choice is to be Muslim. My choice is to be faithful towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is my choice. My hijab comes with that. My hijab is a wajib. It's not something I chose to put on my head. No, it's something that I have to wear because I chose to be that, I do that ibadah towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is something I think that's very important as well, is that we have to bring forward this perspective that yes, hijab comes hand in hand with Islam. Hijab is my form of really, you know, doing that ibadah towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not going to be a person who is going to disregard, obviously, people who are having that hijab journey. Of course, everyone has that journey with hijab. It's not something you can perfect right from the beginning. Just like salah, we start when we are 9 years old, or even younger. I think we start doing our prayers because it is a journey to perfect yourself within Islam. Islam gives you that opportunity to have that journey to perfect yourself. So it is a journey, and everyone goes along that journey at different points. But we can't disregard the fact that hijab is a wajib, and we have to, I think, encourage others to really look at it that way and bring up that this kind of perspective on hijab within the West and within anywhere in the world, I think, because it's shown in such a negative light. It's not something that really makes me less of a person. No, if anything, it makes me as a person, as Fatima, makes me feel whole because this is part of my identity. And if I were to go, I can't even imagine trying to work, in the government in Quebec or Montreal and trying to go in and have to change my hijab, because that is, you're asking me to change who I am. You know, you're not asking me to take off a hat that it's disrespectful to wear this hat inside school like they used to tell us. No, I'm wearing this is like you're not going to ask someone to shave their hair off in order to work in that place. This is my identity. This is a part of who I am, and it's something that I've been wearing ever since I was I've had nightmares about that. So I think it's very interesting to see how the world depicts us as Muslims, and then for us to be here and still be fighting and still be going strong with our hijab is so inspiring. And I'm so happy to be part of this panel with so many inspirational women. And thank you so much all for sharing your experiences. I think it was truly incredible learning from all of your experiences and everything that you all went through.
All right, with the same question for Zainab. So Zainab, as you are from Florida, right? So will United States be a safer place for Muslim women in the future as you have a new president? I want to hear your opinion.
So my opinion is the same one as Fatima's. I don't have anything to add there, but what I do have to add is that I do believe that the hijab is a huge threat to this idea called secularism. And I think that's where the root of the problem lies, because, the more you study the political foundings, as well as the psychological roots of the United States and the West in general, you really see this idea of the separation of church and state. And like Fatima said, it's like the hijab is such a wajib in a Muslim's life. You don't choose the hijab, you choose Islam. And just like your prayers, your hajj, your zakat, these are pillars of Islam. This is a directive to women and men with different roles. And so it's not something that we choose. It's something that we express, but it's a very public kind of expression. You can pray at home, you can fast at home. Nobody has to see that. But once you wear that hijab and you come into the public eye with that on, you're like, Masla said beautifully, that you're identifying yourself as a Muslim, you're a part of this community. And that is where the threat lies, because you're really negating this idea of separation of church and state. A Muslim woman is church, state, everything all in one, because her devotion is to God. Her identity is God. It's not, I'm Democrat, I'm Republican, I'm feminist, I'm not, whatever. These are all garbage labels, because our only identity is Islam. And the only thing I would end with here is that, a lot of times we fall into this pitfall. What we do wrong is we look up to influencers and people, laymen like myself, who are imperfect, who are not role models, should never be role models, and influencers should not be looked up to, because that's what's happening. People are removing their hijab and everyone's like, oh my gosh, like we really need to stop looking at people as our pedestal, and really look at like the true role models. For me personally, it's always been, the wives of the Holy Prophet, Lady Fatima, the daughter of the Holy Prophet. She died protecting her hijab. Her house was intruded and she ran behind the door. Like, I can't even say this without like, tearing up, because when I read about that story, that's when I was like, wow, the hijab is such an important part of our faith. We cannot live without it. And we really need to look up to these role models, because that's where we'll actually find the true courage to wear it in the way it's meant to. Thank you, everyone, for having me on. Thank you for listening to me and my humble words. And I hope that, today really shed a light on a lot of interesting topics. I know I learned a lot. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Zena, for giving your opinion. Actually, we still have around few minutes. Before I end the conference, I would like to ask four amazing women here to say something to everyone who are watching. Maybe start from Anar. Do you want to say something to everyone who are watching us?
I think I had my final words a little bit ago, but so I'm not really quite sure what to add, but just to remember that, this life is so temporary. And so when we are thinking about the things that we want to stand up for and hold on to in this world, nothing is forever in this dunya. And so that goes with the concept of hijab and the fights that we want to put up for whatever reason we want to. So just keep that in mind. And peace to everybody. Thank you so much.
All right, Fatima, your turn.
Yeah, so same as Minar, I just had my final words. I'm actually going to let Masla go ahead, because I think you did not get the chance to. But I just want to encourage everyone to stay strong no matter the struggle, and keep that faith strong, because when you do believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will help you and He will guide you and He will give you that faraj. I think we go through so many situations in our lives and we sort of start to lose faith. So keep your faith strong, and Allah brings us through these tests in life that we just have to overcome. So think of every challenge as a test, bringing you closer to the hereafter, inshallah.
All right, Masla, maybe you say something for the latest thing.
Again, Jazakallah khair for World Hijab Day, for putting this conference together, to the incredible, empowering, inspiring women on this panel. It was an honor to speak here alongside you guys. I look up to all of you immensely. You guys are all trailblazers in this world, and I look forward to connecting with you all also moving forward. And again, I just want to leave with everyone with like a few words of: wear your hijab with pride. It is a blessing for us to be able to serve God in this way, just like peace and blessings. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to really go after what you're passionate about, what your dreams are. don't let society, what the media portrays us as, like any limitations from the external world, limit the shine and the light that you have inside of you. Exactly, wear it with pride. And also, if you want to join My Hijab, My Right, we are working to bring awareness and to unite Muslim women around the world, to fight hijab bans, not just inside of Quebec, but inside of Europe as well. So you can follow us at My Hijab, My Right. And I really look forward to all of the incredible, amazing things that everyone watching this conference does, as well as everyone on this panel. Jazakallah khair again for having me on here.
Thank you, Masla and Zainab. Please, your turn, Zainab.
I feel like I already dropped the mic, but okay, here I am. Since you want to hear from me, I think the only thing I would say is that I've faced my struggles, and this is part of life. Like, we're not perfect. We have to remember that we'll fall, we'll slip, our iman will be low, it'll be high some days. There was times, I'm gonna be very honest, when I was just a middle school kid. I just wanted to be invisible. I didn't want to be stuffed in a locker or shoved. I got punched in the bathroom. There were lots of, when you go through violence, right, for being who you are, you just start rethinking about your whole identity. It's like, wow, Islam to me is one thing, but the people perceive it another way. And it's really hindering my path to be who I am. And it took me a long time. What really helped me is watching Muhammad Ali. I know that's a really weird thing to say right now, but I used to watch him, and I used to watch his interviews, and I'd be like, why is this man so unapologetic? And he's so proud to be Muslim. He's so proud of being, someone who loves God, and he's a champion. He's so visible. And I'm just here trying to get through the day, and I don't want to live like that. I think that's when you change your mind and you're like, look, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm going to take back what's mine. I'm going to be on top, and I'm going to be practicing my faith. And I think that is what led me to wanting to research more about Islam. That I think that resistance helped me grow stronger. And it got me, the more I learned about the deen as a young kid, I got fascinated by it. I used to read up on the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I would just be so intrigued by him, his mannerisms and his akhlaq. And it just the more I fell in love with my religion, the more I fell in love with hijab. And I think that is so important to remember. It's the increasing your awareness of your own deen is going to lead you to that path, no doubt. Thank you for having me once again. Mic drop.
All right, thank you, Maslam, Noor, Fatima, and Zainab for being here. This has been a wonderful conference. I have enjoyed talking to all inspiring panelists here, and thank you for being here. I greatly appreciate your generosity of time and effort. Thank you to all people who all over the world who have been tuned in. And World Hijab Day needs your ongoing support, and please take the opportunity to donate. And the link to donate is on the screen if you want to donate to support World Hijab Day events. And thank you for all positive messages and comments you've given us. May Allah reward your effort for joining and supporting World Hijab Day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.